We are very, very honored that you agreed to be part of this dinner. You're very much part of our community, and I know that we actually a number of years ago we went together to meet with Natan Sharansky when he was in New York, and I remember the conversations that we had around that about how meaningful it was to you and how meaningful it was for me to be able to go there with you, considering your value in the school and your role in the school, your kids going through the school, and at the same time considering your upbringing. I wanted to try to learn a little bit more about that and for our community to learn about you tonight and your connection to Natan, your connection to what we're going to call the movement, the Soviet Jewry movement. So let's just start at the beginning. Tell us about where you grew up.
I grew up in former Soviet Union, Latvia, Riga. Yes. Came to United States in the early 90s. Grew up in a very traditional Jewish family. Okay. Spent most of my childhood with my grandparents, which was a very common thing because parents were working. So it was a very common thing in Soviet Union when grandparents who were already retired took care of the grandchildren.
70s and 80s in Riga, how many very traditional Jewish families were there?
We had a lot of Jewish families, but they were not connected. My grandfather went to Hader. He was from Belarus. So as a little kid, before 1917, before the Russian Revolution, he was born before that. He's from a small town called Hoyniki. It's a small shtetl outside of Gomel. And he actually had formal Jewish education. He read Hebrew. He was praying in hiding. There were a group of elderly men when I was a little kid. They would occasionally get together and pray. I did not witness it. Perhaps they were meeting more often than I saw, but I saw it. You were supposed to be in hiding. We were trained from a very early age not to speak about anything what was going on at home.
And you felt Jewish?
I never talked about it. Also, my grandparents spoke Yiddish. My parents spoke Yiddish. We were listening to music. And when I was little, my grandparents were receiving Yiddish newspaper. Still at that time, in the 70s, we had Jewish newspaper, Yiddish language newspaper, traditional Jewish food. Every morning, instead of a fairy tale, a story about World War II.
Okay.
So there was no other way. You don't talk about this outside. And it's very simple why you don't. Because when I was in my school, it was a public school, the anti-Semitism was so open. The comments, discussions among kids, I would never think of bringing, and they knew I was Jewish. I spoke to my grandma, and she would always tell me, we're different, we have a different purpose, and one day you'll understand.
So you just took it and you got stronger.
I just took it, because there was no way. I was, again, we were not connected. It was a public school with over 1,000 students. Mm-hmm. We had another 3 Jewish students. And we never really communicated. We knew about each other's existence. Why? We looked different, and we had different last names.
That was it.
So it was kind of a connection, but we never would get together and speak. It was not safe.
And you were, Alex?
So I'm from Ukraine, the city called Mariupol today.
We've heard about a lot.
Before it was Zhdanov. I came to United States with my close family, my mother, my father, and my little brother. We came in 1980, so almost 46 years ago. I was 17, teenager, and where I come from, similarly to what Diana said, it was very difficult to be Jewish. Not only difficult, but knowledge did not exist. In my town, there was a Jewish community, but it was not known. The only times that I heard about Jewish community was at the funerals of the Jewish. If someone Jewish passed away, there would be Kaddish. Group of 10 men would get together to say Kaddish in the apartment or in the house, and the 11th person would be standing outside looking out for KGB or for...
What would have happened if they would have found out?
They might have gotten arrested or anything like that. So that
against
was
the
the
law.
only Jewish event in the city when someone
funeral.
only funeral.
And even that was done undercover.
And it was
Quiet.
not even funeral. Funeral was as a usual funeral, but the day after or during the day after during the funeral, people would gather to say Kaddish, and they needed minyan. So the only time
That was it. No
that
bar
was it.
mitzvahs,
Nothing
no
else.
weddings.
No bar mitzvahs.
Just
No
funeral.
weddings. No brit milas. I mean, of course, there were private, secret brit milas done, but that's it.
So it sounds safe to say that both of you grew up with a strong Jewish identity. You very much knew that you were Jewish, and there was the remnants of the traditions, but you also certainly didn't have the opportunity to live as kids, like your kids do, to live your Judaism and to, right, that's a very powerful thing. No, certainly no moments of joy, maybe one moment of sadness.
The only information that I learned about my Judaism came also from my grandfather, who was very practicing Jew, very knowledgeable. He actually was learned. His name was Dober Altshuler, and he learned in Cheder before the revolution. And he would tell me, he lived in a different city of Kharkov, but when he came over to visit us, he would tell me the story of Hanukkah, and that was the main story, as well as Biblaic
Wow. So
story.
that's what it takes, 70 years
Grandparents.
can wipe out a whole generation
Yes.
of Yiddishkeit and of knowledge and of connection. And you were thankfully still connected from before, and
Yes.
thankfully, as we know now, the story ends, so to speak, or the story continues. You've been able to pass that on to your children. Remarkable. So you both came in 1980.
In 1991.
91.
Little
Okay,
bit
so you came. So 91 was when it was really opening already.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It was already after the fall of the Soviet Union.
My first trip to Estonia was 1991, after the fall. Rabbi Krauss and I went all these places, Gomel, Mogilov, Brusk, all these places. One of the things that was remarkable to me was that when we were there, I grew up on Soviet Jewry, Sharansky, Nudel, Mendelevich, and then I would talk to these families in Russia, and they didn't know who these people were.
We had absolutely no connection to anything what was going on.
Right. So you didn't so the Refusnik movement, right? And you're talking about in the 80s when you were there, and you were here, so those were different experiences. So tell me what that's like.
We were the first family that left our town.
Okay.
So I was told that after we left, there was articles in the newspapers how this family deserted communism and socialism and left Soviet Union. I came to United States, and I enrolled in Yeshiva University. That was my first. We came in February.
So you're 17, 18
1980. I was I was 17, and I applied to Yeshiva University.
Spoke English?
I didn't speak English. I didn't
It's a
speak
very
Hebrew.
important little detail.
It
He
was
didn't
very,
speak neither of the languages.
it was very, very difficult because I studied German as a foreign language in Russia.
Okay.
So it was hard. But
I can imagine. Wow, but Yeshiva University took you.
Yeshiva University, so there was an interesting episode. At that time was Rabbi Bezdin. I came to visit Yeshiva University for the interview with my aunt who was very religious from Williamsburg, and she spoke Yiddish with him. And he said that, okay, if you learn how to read and write Hebrew, now it was April, if by June or July you learn how to read and write in Hebrew, I will take you in JSS.
No pressure.
So I went to Coney Island or to Ocean Parkway with little kids into the school for a couple of months to study out of bed, and they gave me a test in July, and I got
You
accepted.
passed the test.
Yeah.
So you had to learn English and Hebrew at the same time.
At the same time,
English to function and Hebrew to get into YU.
at that time we didn't have any electronics, of course. So there was the cards, language cards,
No Duolingo.
English
Before
and
Duolingo.
Russian. So I would write also with the English in Hebrew, and I would learn
Learning two
at the
languages
same
at the
two
same
languages.
time. Remarkable. Okay.
It's
And then what did you
difficult.
study in YU?
I studied computer science
Okay.
and JSS and Hebrew studies. It was the most difficult experience for me because not speaking English and learning Russian by heart, it was just too much pressure. But
It was hard, but it was your first, also on the Jewish side, it was your first formal, certainly, or maybe even informal Jewish education. Okay, wow.
I came in 91.
You were then, what were you up to in life? How old were you?
I was 20 years old.
20 years old?
Yes,
Okay. Had you got
I,
university already?
Yes. So in Riga, I finished 2 years of Latvian university, math and physics teacher. I was studying to be a teacher. But then when I came to United States, I always knew that it was not my calling. It was just a very practical decision on my parents' side because they felt that maybe through that I can learn computer programming. So I came to United States, I enrolled at the computer programming course, and then I decided, okay, that's not for me. So I went to FIT and I became an accessories designer, and I studied interior design, fashion design.
And tell me about your Jewish communal experience
So
then?
at that time, there was really none until I met Alex. We met through my cousin. We had a very traditional
good
shidduch.
friend of, best
Yes.
friend of mine. Yeah.
Okay.
He introduced us. They were very good friends, and that's how we
Then the rest is
met.
history.
That's what
Yes,
friends are
yes.
for.
So that was really your kind of re-entry. so to speak.
Definitely through Alex, yes. When meeting him, and he had a very strong connection. I think going to graduating from Yeshiva University, I think that's what gave him the knowledge, connection to Judaism, and that's
Beautiful, what a story. So we're going to go back to some of the Soviet Jewish stuff in a second, but your decision, I guess, I don't know what it was, around the early 2000s to start sending your kids to school, was it obvious that you're going to go to a Jewish school? Was it a question as to where they get educated? I'm sure it's not a simple question.
Early on, when I experienced challenge in learning Hebrew, learning Torah as a new immigrant from Soviet Union, I said to myself that when I have kids, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna give them Jewish education from the start.
Okay.
And Bezrat Hashem, we
It felt
made
right.
decisions.
It just felt
If you're comfortable, share some of, meaning share why it wasn't simple. What were you?
It's an interesting question. Just because we didn't come from me personally.
Surrounding also.
We were not surrounded with people who send their kids to Jewish schools. We didn't have that circle of friends. They were mostly in public schools or private schools in Manhattan. So this, I guess, was the only reason why. And then understanding, we had a lot of conversations about this. And Alex said something, he just said one thing which changed my life forever. He said, we grew up without Jewish education. We cannot do it to our children. We're here for a reason. Let them make decisions when they have it.
Right. Okay.
You don't want them to say to you 20 years after that, why don't you send us to a
And
Jewish
now,
school?
if you reflect on that decision 20 years after, was it?
There is no better decision. We're very proud of our kids, and I'm
remarkable
very
kids
grateful
like
to
that.
Alex, yes, that we did this, because who knows?
So how would you, it's obviously the differences are so great, but you compare, right? So Jeremy and Reuben and Matthew, their experience as children and their connection to Judaism and to Yiddishkeit compared to yours.
The only connection that we had was those very rare moments when our fathers and grandfathers were listening to radio late at night, BBC and Radio Svoboda, Freedom.
In my case, Kol Israel.
Always jazz.
And I recall in 1967 war and especially in 1973
Right,
war,
when
he
there
was
was
listening,
right.
and I saw him listening to be so intense because we were surrounded, and I was asking him, how's it going, and he said, there's none.
So there was that connection to Israel in the heart, but it was obviously, again, undercover.
It was just something very special, because you understand you're one, you're part of it. You're so far away, you're disconnected, but you were there.
That was I imagine that was a post 1967 thing, especially, right? Yeah.
Yes. For me, it was in the 70s.
Right, but you're saying the difference.
So for our kids,
these kids can go around and.
Of course, they went to yeshivas after high school. They were in SAR. It's all about Israel. It's there's patriotism of the school, connection, singing, learning. It's all about connection to Israel, and this is the most important thing.
And just to hear the voices of Jewish children, for me, when I brought my kids to SAR, and to hear Jewish voices singing in unison Jewish prayers,
Right.
became a cornerstone for confirming our decision that we need Jewish education.
I think one of the things that you feel when you're describing before about about the funerals and about everything being like, I think the way our school is even designed architecturally, everything's open. Nothing's hidden at all. It's all just out there. Whatever you do, whatever you believe, and that's a very stark contrast. Let's talk about both Natan and Natan Sharansky, who I know that now you've come to know them, and certainly we all knew them as our heroes from different places. But again, from your perspectives, whenever you learned about them, whether it was in your case, Alex, when you were here, because when he was freed, you were here already.
For me, as a freshman student at Yeshiva University, I remember I first came in September of 1980 to YU, and on the first day I was told by my classmates that tonight we are going to 67th Street to protest against Soviet. Yes,
Your
first week. In front of the Soviet consulate.
Okay.
For Natan, for Anatoly Sharansky.
Wow.
And I was, I didn't used to Jews going to protest. I just came from Soviet Union. And here in the United States, in New York, Jews are going to protest. I wasn't even a citizen yet. I was a refugee. So I was afraid. I said, you know what?
Yes.
Like, how can I go to protest? And they said, come, you're Jew.
Wow.
Jews have to protest. We need, let my people go. And I went to this protest, and I learned about Sharansky, and a few years later, when he was freed, I felt that we all had to contribute to it, that this was achievement.
So you got here early enough to feel like you were part of that life, yes, part of the fight, and then part of the freedom.
I was there, and I felt really part of the community. For me, that was a big surprise that Jewish Americans are standing together with the Soviet Jews. It was a big inspiration.
That is really it's such an interesting picture now. So Diana, you come in 1991. The Sharanskys are together already in Yerushalayim, thank God. Tell me your first, I don't know, hearing the name or...
Hearing the name, maybe here and there, I was just familiar with the story. But my real introduction to Natan Sharansky is actually connected to SAR.
Okay.
In the beginning of COVID lockdowns,
Okay.
I think it was the first week. I remember we just came to our house in the Hamptons, and the podcast was organized. Do you remember this?
Oh, yes, of course. I forgot. Because we were the only ones locked down, so everyone was feeling bad for us. And Natan Sharansky, Josh Lookstein organized that for me, Rabbi Lookstein.
It was an interview, and it was a wonderful interview. And many questions were discussed, how he was dealing with isolation, obviously was a main subject, because the lockdowns were just starting.
That's right, I forgot.
People were feeling very disconnected, isolated, and he said something. The whole podcast was very interesting about him taking on a hobby when he was in prison. You know, he's always full of humor.
Right.
So he gave a lot of practical advice for me. But then he said something very special. He said, after listing the number of hobbies that he took on while being in prison, he said that, and you know, I just want to share with you something that I really never felt alone while being in solitary confinement. Because I felt like a part of this long chain. I was this link in that chain, and I knew I'm part of the Jewish nation, and I can never be alone. And this phrase for me is still, I think it really changed my life. I will never forget what he said. And I was also reflecting on my childhood, that maybe this connection is so strong that sometimes you feel it without realizing it. Maybe that's why we had no doubts about who we are, being completely disconnected, not being able to learn Judaism, to learn any, again, not having a learning experience, not celebrating holidays, not knowing anything about holidays. We still felt very strongly Jewish.
It was always there.
It was always there. So this was my really,
that
and I shared it with him. I shared it with him, and I think he was a little surprised. He probably didn't remember because he speaks so much.
Right. Listen, I forgot.
Yeah.
You're right. We were, and he was literally giving us. That was the idea, giving us tips for how to be alone.
Yes, this was really life-changing for me.
Wow.
This interview was
Okay.
very important.
Our kids. It's about heroes. You know, when I was with the Sharanskys on Shabbat this summer, where actually this whole idea started coming to fruition, and then we realized that it was going to be 40 years since February 11th, 1986. So our dinner is February 1st. It's almost exactly 40 years from that day he was released, which I'm sure you remember. And my wife, Shana, said to Avital, you know, because we were with the Greenbergs, and Blue Greenberg said to Natan, next time you're in New York, you should come to SAR. And he's like, I don't know, we'll see, I don't know. And then Shana said, you're our hero, you're our heroes. And Avital, who's such a modest person, you know, she was loud when she needed to be loud, but then she, you know, her natural persona is so quiet and so modest. And she said, you have new heroes now. And she was, you know, we're obviously in the middle of this, you know, the time that all these young kids are doing heroic things. Can you reflect on the heroism of the Sharanskys, what it meant to you? I mean, you just did a little bit, but...
It's the voice, the Jewish voice that sounded from this Soviet oppression that linked them to Israel. And it is, I could draw a parallel of that we now experience in challenging times and surrounded by all this anti-Israel protests, that Jewish voice is needed today more than ever to link us to Israel and to stay true to who we are as a nation, and be united together. It doesn't matter whether you are religious, Haredi, or not religious, Zionist. We all in this together, and Israel is our homeland, and we, the voice that is needed today more than ever to wake up all the Jews and to think as one, and not to let current confusion and noise to make to separate us as people, because that is done today intentionally more than anything. And we all one nation, and that is the most important message for the new generation.
Our kids have been learning about the Sharanskys over the course of the last couple of weeks, and they're going to meet Natan and his daughter Rachel tomorrow in school. It's not tomorrow, but it's tomorrow when everyone's watching this film. So the next day in school. What do you want them to? We have Matthew left in the school now, but what do you want all of our kids to take away from this experience?
I'm going to let Alex.
Okay.
I think he has, yes.
We should look at and understand and remember our biblical times as well as entire history, and we should look at the heroes who are together with us today as a cornerstone towards our future, because Jewish in every Haggadah during Pesach we read that every generation experiences these difficult times as we are experiencing after October 7, which came so unexpectedly. And we should be strong and see that Hashem is looking to Jewish people and testing us from generation to generation to make sure that we are one nation.
Beautiful. You know, we started this conversation with, for both of you, kind of with like this almost Jewish life that was very much a part of you, but very much not allowed to be a public part of you. And now it's I can only imagine. I'm sitting here in the Altneu Shul, which you were very instrumental in building in the middle of Manhattan. And I know that obviously I know the involvement that you have with SAR and the things that you're doing all over the place in Israel, at Yeshiva University, and so many different causes that you're involved with. I don't know if you're comfortable saying, but how does that feel? How does it feel to be so able to be and to be impacting publicly, openly Jewish life in such a major way in so many places, considering where you started?
First of all, it feels great. It also feels like we are.
It's humbling.
We are partnering with Hashem to help wherever we can and give back to the Jewish community and Klal Yisrael.
Okay.
I also think that we're meeting a lot of great people for this.
Yeah.
And this is one of the that's one of the reasons, I guess, because as you do things that we do, you get different ideas. You meet different people. You know, it's something that is just, it's a very good feeling. It's very humbling. And it's very exciting, meeting new people and knowing that your voice can be heard. You can make a difference.
That's something we try to tell our kids all the time. You know, every bar mitzvah boy, every bar mitzvah girl, you should know that you can make a difference.
Even the little things make such a big difference. And it starts with little things.
It sure does. It sure does. The theme of our year in school and the theme of our dinner is Uvacharta BaChayim, is choosing life. And I think, you know, again, I'm struck by the way you started with the fact that the only thing that you were able to do or that you tried to do was to be there to end life, you know, to have a funeral, to end life, and that you can now use everything that you have to choose to bring life to other people is really a blessing that we're all benefiting from. This evening is about bringing life to kids. We have 1,800 kids in this school. 50% roughly of our population are people that are supported to come to the school, and you know, and that is always, I think, in most of our day schools, that is not. There's no limit to our responsibility to make sure that everybody can have that experience, and that's why we do events like this, is to make sure that this is not an experience that's just for one person or for another person, but it's for every single person. I'm humbled and I'm honored to be part of a community where that was never a question, ever. Not just for school, by the way, but for camp, and for making a bar mitzvah or whatever, or paying your rent or taking care of medical needs. The community understands that this is for everyone, and obviously that needs to happen through a certain culture of choosing life. So thank you for being models of that in beautiful ways, and for your kids, who I know and I see are really very much walking in those footsteps, and they should just be well, and they should be able to make those same choices.
I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Krauss.
Good.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.